So this is going to be my response to The Night Sky Prince. I just got done watching um, your video about what Sakaguchi said about modern Final Fantasy is very surprising. Basically, stating that he is sometimes feels, I guess, stifled in his ability to create something new because the fans kind of require a certain level of familiarity. Um, and they um I mean, honestly, the fans are kind of can be split because I've seen and heard from both sides of the argument where, but I guess what I mostly see is fans that think that um Final Fantasy is not as good as it like used to be or whatever. And I think one of the best things about Final Fantasy, and one of the strongest things, as opposed to something like a Dragon Quest, is the fact that with Dragon Quest it kind of stays the same. You know what you're getting. It's just they get better at doing the same thing, and I love those games for that. But with Final Fantasy, it's a series that constantly evolves and is always experimenting with ideas, and that's one thing I really like about it. Now, naturally, when you're taking risks, they are risks, so it's not always going to work. Um, but I guess what my issue is when it comes to Final Fantasy is sometimes the ideas are amazing, the execution lacks, and I don't think that that's something that should dissuade them from trying new things. You know what I mean? They 11 was an MMO. They tried that. They made something nice there. Um, 12 was very unique for its time. I actually haven't played 13, um, but I know people who have. And the fact they had three 13s was kind of weird. But um, 14 is, I love 14. Um, just another MMO. Now 15, the thing about 15 is 15 had some amazing ideas. The execution was lacking, and that's one thing that I really wish. Um, when I see sometimes the so 15 has grown on me. I don't think 15 is the greatest Final Fantasy game, but in a sense, it's one of the most memorable, I'd say, um, because it's also because it's recency bias, but it had elements that were really new and fresh. The open world was really cool. Now the execution wasn't super great for the open world. It was very sparse and very empty. There wasn't really much to do, but I did like the environment that it added. One thing I did love about 15 was the character relationships, which I think is a core hallmark of Final Fantasy, and I feel like that has been, um, I guess, that hasn't seemed as good recently. I guess. Um, I didn't finish 16, but 16 had great characters. But it felt mostly like a very solitary experience, despite you having party members, right? So that doesn't really um it didn't really hit like 15 did, because 15 added those elements of the characters bouncing off each other and being a foil to each other so well. They kind of all meshed, and it just that was really that aspect of the game was really well done. But the combat had had things had elements that were lacking. Um, Sometimes the combat was a little hard to follow, which is why I really like the direction they went with Remake and Rebirth. Those games are honestly the pinnacle of RPG to me. I think that that is the best battle system ever. And I think the best solution going forward is keeping the familiarity in the battle system. Keep that battle system the same. Make your changes and maybe add some new elements to differentiate it. But really, now Final Fantasy can explore settings a little bit more. There's still a bunch of settings that they haven't done yet. We have seen high fantasy, Final Fantasies. I think 16 was high fantasy, and then we've seen like the fusion of like um, fantasy elements and futuristic elements. You know, in the cyberpunk world of like 7 and 15 had a great balance that I thought was really cool. That not everyone shares that opinion, but the point I'm making is there's so much that can be done with ideas that haven't been explored in a long time. Like the world of six, we haven't really gotten to see that reflected in more modern graphics. I know sometimes you're trying to go for new things, but what you can also do is hit that sweet spot and compromise where you can create a new perspective of something that was already done. And that way it's still fresh and new in the sense of we haven't seen it before, but it's still familiar. And I think that might resonate well with fans because that kind of hits both, right? Um, Final Fantasy Tactics World, Ivalice. We last saw Ivalice in 12. Um, but seeing Ivalice, you know, in these modern HD graphics, um, could be really cool if you want to get back into that world. You can also bring back older. You don't have to remake older games or anything, but you can just create new stories in some of those older game worlds. That could be something that happens with 17. Uh, 17 can go in a completely new direction with a setting, but I think as long as you keep the battle system that we currently have, that works. And that honestly I feel like should be enough to anchor a fan to the new game. You know, it's still going to have that familiarity of ATB gauge and Fire and Thundera, and you know you've got your summons, and then especially if you know you're a fan of remake, then and rebirth, then you know you're really just giving people more of that because that's clearly what they want. Those games sold like hotcakes. They're my favorite. I think Rebirth is like the like best RPG. Like the way that it plays is just so satisfying, and I really like that. And I don't think any other game that has a similar kind of battle system, no Tales or Star Ocean or anything, even comes close because we never get that kind of battle system with that level of polish and production value. It just hasn't been done. Like and that's usually something you have to sacrifice in a JRPG. You have to sacrifice those AAA production values in order to get that niche gameplay. But Seven Remake and Rebirth really hit like the sweet spot. So I think they have the template now. Like they've done it. I know they're still working on those, but once those are over, yeah, like that should be the direction that 17 goes in. You guys should make something that is like that but new. Like that's gonna be great. As a matter of fact, that's an opportunity to make a new 7. And I don't mean like a new like Final Fantasy 7. I mean the same way 7 blew everyone's minds and pushed the envelope of what was possible in an RPG. And like now you guys have the perfect template. You guys have to develop and craft the characters that people resonate with the same way they resonate with Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, Barrett, Sephiroth. Uh, you know, those characters are so strong and so great. Uh, and then, you know, if you don't want to take too many risks character wise, I wouldn't take risks character wise because that doesn't really seem to work. Although we don't even know because in Final Fantasy 12, right? Like we kind of had they kind of felt like the main character wasn't didn't fit the mold well enough, so then they added Vaughn and put Vaughn in that spot, and Vaughn wasn't super popular with people for good reason. He really felt like an add-on to the story in a lot of ways. Um, but yeah, I mean, you can really do a lot with that 7 rebirth template. Just you know, add it into a new world. I know that I shouldn't say just. It's not that simple, but that's definitely the direction I want to see the series going. I think that's perfect. I think it took you this many games to figure out this is what's gonna work, and not forever. But that battle system can last you at least two more games, which would be like another 10 years at least. You know what I mean? Like that battle system can last like two more games, I think, before people really get bored of it because it's just a good battle system. It works. At that point, really, all you need to do is change the story, I guess. Um, but those are just my opinions. Uh, what else? I think I think that's really all I needed to say on that. I thought that was a really good video. Um, yeah, I'm always very interested when I hear these interviews with these developers because sometimes it's fascinating to me that the what the developers see and what the fans see is sometimes so different. And I know they're looking at it from a different perspective, but sometimes I wonder if both sides have a very skewed misunderstanding of what the other side is looking at. I know I felt that way when I was listening to the interview between, I think it was a Nomura interview with Kingdom Hearts. Some of the things that he was saying like was blowing my mind, and I felt like they didn't represent how the fans felt. Um, so you know, but yeah, that was a great video. I subscribed. I really liked the content you made, so keep doing that.